Man is nothing but what he makes of himself. Jean-Paul Sartre said it best. Slowly, almost without realizing it, you became the version of yourself she wanted. You began as a man, wild, untamed, unknowable, and somehow, you shaped yourself into someone comfortable for her. You looked into her eyes and forgot to look into your own. You never read Being and Nothingness, yet it's guided more of your life than any book you ever picked up. Sartre, in a Paris shattered by war and rebellion, wrote a line every man should have known at birth: hell is other people. Not because people are evil, but because in their gaze, we often lose ourselves. That isn't love. That's bad faith. The moment we stop being the author of our own lives and become just a character in someone else's story. It doesn't matter if you're 20, anxiously checking her texts, or 50, quietly watching your marriage fade. The trap is the same. You became for her instead of for yourself. And here's the hard truth: the man who lives for her dies by her indifference. This isn't bitterness or anger. It's metaphysics. Sartre understood consciousness as a void, a nothingness, with no fixed essence, until we choose. The man who forgets this, the man who believes a woman can complete him, define him, or redeem him, hands over the wheel of his own soul. And she senses it. It doesn't matter if she's 19 or 45. She knows when you've placed her at the center of your identity. She notices when your need for her grows louder than your need to remain yourself, and that's when she pulls away. Not cruelty. Not lack of care. Desire simply can't survive in captivity. It needs risk, space, freedom, your freedom. The young man believes love is a currency that buys loyalty. He hasn't yet felt the humiliation of giving everything while she looks elsewhere. The older man has felt it. He knows it too well. He sits quietly beside a woman who once wanted him, before he stopped challenging her reality, before he became predictable, safe, and tame. She doesn't want safe. She wants sovereign. That is the shocking truth Sartre showed us. The human heart craves what it cannot fully possess. The man who doesn't need her, who can enter her life and walk out just as easily, forces her to confront her own abyss. That confrontation awakens her, deeply, profoundly. You've seen him. The man who holds his shape in storms, who doesn't bend or beg. She cannot forget him. Not because he manipulates or plays games, but because he stayed true to his own being. You want love? That's human. But the moment you need it to exist, you vanish. This isn't a trick. It's existential integrity. The man who exists first, defines himself, chooses his values, and lets love orbit if it dares, that is the man women fall for. The rare, Sartrean man, the one who knows the cost of freedom is solitude and pays it gladly. You've been told to open up, to be vulnerable, to share your emotions. Yet the more you shared, the more she withdrew. Transparency, you learned, doesn't earn trust, it dilutes mystery. You became readable, tame, harmless. Sartre was right, a human being is a project, not a product. You are becoming, not a fixed object to admire. When you reduce yourself to your emotions, your needs, your wounds, you confuse confession with presence. You hand over your depths before she's earned the map, and she recoils. Not because she's heartless, but because masculinity at its highest is not a boy begging for understanding. It is a force that exists, independent of witness. Sartre calls this the being for itself. The man who chooses, defines, and stands in radical freedom, not recklessness, says, I will not collapse into the man you want me to be. I am. The older man at the bar? He holds her gaze longer not because of status or appearance, but because he has paid the price of identity. He's lost the woman who left when he stopped chasing. He's learned the humiliation of bending until his spine snapped. He's tried to buy love with consistency. And now, he sits in silence, not as a performance, but as a monument to survival. Silence that speaks louder than cleverness ever could. Younger men mistake noise for power. Older men, if they've done the work, understand the deepest gravity is wordless. She senses it. She can't always name it. But in the presence of a man who has no compulsion to impress, no anxiety to win, she feels something ancient awaken, a recognition not of safety, but of ontological danger, the danger of facing a man who cannot be owned, reshaped, or guilted. A man who is whole. She will test that wholeness, provoke, withdraw, offer chaos dressed as passion, just to see if you falter. If you chase, explain, or perform, you collapse from man into mirror, from substance into shadow. But if you remain unmoved, not to play games, but because you simply are, she feels the anguish of freedom. Your freedom. And in that anguish, her desire awakens. Not because you manipulated, but because you reminded her of a truth every woman longs for but cannot say. The masculine does not bend toward approval. She wants a man who breathes fully in her absence. not a man who survives on her attention or her validation. When you become that man, not in theory, not as a persona, but in truth, she feels your gravity. Whether she stays or walks away, she will remember you. Because men like this are rare, there's a moment every man faces, the subtle instant when he is about to vanish into her expectations. No alarms, no dramatic warning. Just a quiet yes when your soul wants to say no. You soften your truth to keep her calm. You withhold a boundary so she doesn't leave. That is bad faith, Sartre's term for the quiet extinction of your own self. You tell yourself this is love, that sacrifice is noble, that compromise is maturity. But deep down, you know it's not. It's a slow self-erasure, a soft surrender. And she notices. Always. Even if she cannot name it, she feels when you start disappearing from yourself, your presence begins to orbit hers. Your truth becomes negotiable. You start adjusting, avoiding friction. And she grieves, not for you, but for the man you once were. The man who entered her life as a mystery, who made her feel alive, unstable in the most exhilarating way. Now, you are predictable, reliable, safe. Yet you sense something shifting. The emptiness in her eyes, the touch that lingers less, the laughter that feels like performance. You've done everything right, and yet, you've become wrong in the only way that matters. You stopped being yourself. She didn't fall in love with obedience. She fell in love with your distance, your independence, the untamed essence you brought into the room before you decided that love meant taming yourself. And the older man, if honest, knows the pain. He doesn't recognize himself outside her gaze anymore. He spent years being the provider, the protector, the dependable partner, and forgot the boy who stared at stars with fire in his chest. That boy was closer to the truth than the man who replaced him. But this is not despair, it's the doorway. Because manhood does not shrink with age. It sharpens. It clarifies. It burns cleaner. Only if you stop lying to yourself. The lie is simple, that her love completes you. It does not. The true prize is the man who remains whole in love's presence. Who doesn't fracture, doesn't trade identity for intimacy. Who loves fully without letting her define him. Once she senses you are no longer dependent, she can finally relax into being with you. And yes, this goes against everything society tells you: serve, please, pursue. Sartre saw through it all. To live authentically, you must remain a source of your own meaning. You are condemned to freedom, not cursed, but required to choose yourself every day, no matter who enters or exits your life. If she leaves, let her. A man who does not collapse into absence was never abandoned. He simply returns to himself. You are most attractive the moment you no longer need to be. Almost no man believes this because belief requires experience. Most never endure enough silence, enough solitude. They flee too early. Crawl back. Apologize for their truth. Break under disapproval. But the man who stays standing, silent when she rages, calm when she withdraws, rooted when tested, not out of games, but out of refusal to lie, becomes unforgettable. Because he has become real. Sartre called it authentic existence, a life where a man accepts the weight of freedom, the burden of choice, and refuses to be less than what he is. This is masculinity not as performance but as presence. Presence independent of outcome. And presence changes everything. She feels it. She may not like it, because it confronts her with her own freedom, her own capacity to choose. But that confrontation awakens desire. Her desire returns not because you chased, but because she remembers what it feels like to be with a man who orbits nothing. No age limit. Not too late. You could be 70, and still reclaim the man you were before you gave yourself away. Or 20, and decide now to never surrender your identity again. It begins with small refusals. Refuse to send the last text begging for clarity. Refuse to break your silence just because it feels unbearable. Refuse to pretend you're okay with things that train you to keep the peace. You're not here to be liked. You're here to become, to exist with such force that the world leans in. This is the Sartrian man. The one who refuses to lie to himself for acceptance. Every sacrifice of authenticity chips away at the soul, and the soul is not something to gamble for love. If she respects you, if she's ready for a man, she will meet you in your freedom, not as a prize, but as an equal. If she cannot, she was never yours. She was a mirror, reflecting your own compromises. Step away from the mirror. Shatter it if you must. Walk forward, not lonely, but powerful. In sacred solitude, you meet the man you were always meant to be. The one she cannot leave. You begin to understand. Detachment isn't pride. Distance isn't manipulation. It's truth. Your only duty is to yourself. And the truth is, you were never incomplete. That myth, that you needed her to be whole, was a lie from the start. Sartre would say, no one completes you. To be complete is to stop becoming. The moment you hand someone that role, you hand over your life script and say, rewrite me. And a man without authorship is no man at all. You see it in older men, their eyes like faded photographs, haunted but quiet. They don't talk about what they lost. They speak in half sentences, harmless anecdotes, but you feel it. They surrendered their edge, gave up too much, stopped writing their own pages, and now I live chapters that no longer sound like their voice. You also see it in the young, the ones who say all the right things, mirror her values, moods, politics. Beneath the surface, there's desperation, an invisible leash. They don't even know they wear it. She sees it. She senses the weakness, not in body, but in will. And desire dries up like a flame in the wind. The rare man writes his own book, even if no one reads it, even if it means solitude. Here's the secret Sartre hinted at but left unsaid: willingness to be alone makes a man irresistible. Chosen solitude, not loneliness, hammers you into someone no one else could forge. It burns away the noise until your silence becomes music. When that man speaks, he doesn't speak to impress. When he gives, he doesn't give to bind. When he stays freely. When he leaves, he does not look back. That presence alters the room, not through tricks or status, but because he walks with the weight of someone who belongs entirely to himself. She cannot help but feel it. Not every woman will recognize it. Most are used to men who fold, men calibrated for emotional acrobatics and strategic compliance. They won't understand what it means to be near a man who refuses to be less than real. But the right woman will. She recognizes authenticity not with her mind but with her nervous system. You've always been told to chase. But chasing erases yourself. Let her come, not as a reward, but as a test. Can you remain whole in love's presence? Can you hold your course while she cries, pleads, storms? Can you stay in yourself, not out of cruelty, but because you refuse to lie? If you can, freedom comes like nothing else. Not romance, not validation, not praise, only yourself. And in that self, you find more than power. You find peace. The deep silence inside you stops feeling like loneliness and starts feeling like home. You no longer reach. No longer stretch thin. No longer perform love like an audition. Now you watch the world revolve slowly around a self you refuse to compromise. And here is the hidden Sartrean truth: women fall for rare men who don't need them. It isn't detachment for pride, or distance to manipulate, it's truth. You serve only one thing: your own being. You were never incomplete. That lie, that belief that she was missing from your life to make you whole, is exactly that, a lie. Sartre would remind you, no one completes you. Being complete means becoming yourself, ceaselessly. Handing someone the role of completing you hands them your script and asks them to rewrite it. And a man without authorship? He isn't a man at all. Older men, weathered, calm, thoughtful, carry the echoes of what they surrendered. Younger men, desperate, mirror and perform. The rare man, however, writes his own book. He embraces solitude. He becomes irresistible through his chosen aloneness. Alone, but never lonely. Alone, but fully alive. This solitude is not punishment, it is the forge. It burns away dependency, leaving authenticity. When he speaks, it carries weight. When he moves, it carries presence. When he loves, it overflows rather than empties. The world, the women around him, sense it even without knowing why. Not every woman will be ready for him. Many are used to men who fold and adjust to expectations. But the right ones will feel him, not just intellectually, but viscerally. Safe? Perhaps. But more importantly, alive. Sovereign. Real. You don't chase. You let presence do the work. Silence becomes your declaration. Stillness your power. Freedom your magnet. And if she comes, it is not as a reward. You never needed her. If she doesn't, it is no loss. You were never hers to begin with. The story ends not with strategy or manipulation, but with the truth of who you are. You are not a mirror. You are not a mask. You are not a plea. You simply are. And the world, and those who encounter you, will respond accordingly. She may stay, she may leave. But your story is yours. You no longer bend. You no longer negotiate your essence. You love freely, fully, without compromise. And in that freedom, in that presence, women remember. They feel it years later, a pull that does not beg, a gravity that cannot be owned. This is the Sartrean man. You now understand, it's not detachment or coldness. It's being whole. It's truth. You were never incomplete. You were never a reflection waiting to be completed. Sartre's radical truth: freedom is terrifying, but necessary. You are nothing, and from that nothing, you are everything you choose. You've chosen to carry the weight. You are the source. You create meaning, rather than borrow it. Love is overflow, never a demand. You can be touched but never reshaped. Moved but never removed from your center. That is power. That is peace. That is the man she cannot leave. A man like this is unforgettable. He walks forward, silent, free, whole. Not for anyone else, but because he has arrived in himself. And from this place, everything begins. Not with chasing, not with strategy, but with stillness. Unbreakable. This is Sartre's shocking truth: women fall for men who don't need them. And now, having glimpsed this, you've seen a version of yourself you may not have met in years.